What's going on, guys, and welcome to the end times. Welcome back to Jordan the 13th Disciple. It's crazy out there, guys. This video is going to be on the coronavirus and why it's going to have long-term implications, end-of-the-world implications. Don't know. All I know is I got my toilet paper, because that's pretty crazy these days, because everyone needs to, apparently everyone's going to get the runs from it. I got some hand sanitizer so I can stay uninfected from you guys. And probably something you guys haven't even thought of. I got meals. I'm ready for long-term quarantine. Check it out, guys. Watch the rest of this video. I'm going to bring you the knowledge. Alright, guys, I know a book that talks about the end times. It's the Bible. It actually draws out a clear prediction of what's going to happen in the end times. So I want to bring to you guys the correlation between what's happening right now with the coronavirus and the end times. So let's look at it. Matthew 24 talks about the end times, and I want to point out some of the characteristics that this predicts what's going to happen in the end times, and I'm going to draw it back on why that attaches to the coronavirus. So the first things it says, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many." That is the first prediction, that there will be false prophets claiming to be Jesus. And a video by Clayton Jennings actually released this week on the coronavirus talks about how, for example, there's someone in Russia claiming to be Jesus and has thousands of followers. And I'm just telling you guys right now, according to Clayton and whatever his source is, there are people on this planet right now claiming to be Jesus, and that is one of the signs that the end is coming. So if you want to watch that video, I'll put it down in the description below. So you just click on that drop down, and you can click on that link and watch this video if you'd like. Alright, guys, you heard the first one. False prophets are the first sign. Let's go to the second one. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one. I think I'm going to spend more depth because I think it's even more applicable to our current situation here in the U.S. and even outside the U.S. It says, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom." Guys, that's exactly what's happening right now. There's always, talks about wars threatening. There's things happening in Syria, the Middle East, all sorts of things in Iran, all sorts of wars and threatening on even the U.S. or in the entire world. All this stuff is happening, and I want to point out a point that the coronavirus is weakening everyone's nations, everyone's countries. And the reason it's weakening, for example, the U.S., is because we're spending so many resources on trying to stop the spread and doing all these things to maintain the health of our country, that we're weakened because we're spending our resources there. And it provides other nations an opportunity to attack when we're weak, and that's exactly an opportunity to do it. I don't think the U.S. is weak right now. In fact, I know it's not, but it is something that is occupying our time and our attention, and so we got to be aware of this. And also a point to that is that our nation is fighting against each other. The Bible says the nations are fighting against nations and kingdoms against kingdoms. I'll tell you what, just because you look at the U.S. as one country, there's many different people groups inside. There's, people in the South are a lot different than people on the West Coast. What is it? It's different people groups. And so these people groups fight against each other. And if you just look at the way everyone's fighting over toilet paper, for example, it's not even a need. It's nice to have, but in all reality, it's not a necessity. And yet we're so desperate and fighting for it. Imagine how people are fighting to get out of war-torn countries. Imagine the refugees in Syria, how desperate they are to leave. Imagine the desperation if something like the coronavirus spread so viral that we start getting quarantined and food is scarce. Imagine the uproar that would have. Imagine the desperation. We're fighting over toilet paper, guys. Imagine the desperation when wars are breaking out and occupying this country. Be aware, be calm, understand that the devil's greatest trick is to separate us. And the worst thing about this is that we have to rely on other people. And the problem with that is not everyone is going to have the same mindset. So there is going to be separation. And what happens when you're separated is that there's insecurity. You don't know what's going to happen. And so what happens is when we're separated, when families are fighting against other families, our nation is fighting within itself, we're weakened. And what happens is when we're insecure about what someone else will do, we become desperate because we want to protect our family. And so we start fighting for toilet paper. We start fighting for food. And we're so desperate, we'll go to great lengths to take care of our families. And that's a protection I think God put inside of us. But understand our nation is fighting itself. And what the coronavirus could do, spreading to a greater extent, is really divide our country and put us at a weak state. And for this world to tear itself apart, it's exactly what the devil wants to do. And it's exactly what's going to happen in the end times. So I'm telling you guys, be aware. So we've seen that there are potentially already false prophets. So that's the number one sign. The number two is that there is nations rising against nations. We've already seen that. We've seen kingdoms against kingdoms. We've seen families against families, even here in the U.S. So that's already happening. And so that's 2 for 2 on the signs of the end times. And the third one is there will be famines on earth and earthquakes in various places. And all these are just the beginning. Guys, we can see all this. We see famines. We see people starving. We've actually seen more earthquakes. We've even seen plagues, such as the coronavirus being a plague on this earth. We've seen all of that. So be aware, be prepared, but also don't let the separation and the insecurity depict your actions. Trust God. He's in control. Let's read the next part. It says, they will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death. That's talking about Christians. So in the end times, you'll see Christians being persecuted. You know, you can find that all over the world. You can find people being persecuted, but Christians will be put to death. You'll see the Christians will be hated by the nations. There'll be false prophets deceiving people. And I really want to read this point. And this gospel of the kingdom, the gospel being Jesus coming and dying for our sins, that will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So the end will not come until the nations are reached with the gospel. That's what it says right here. And so the end cannot possibly come until everyone on earth has heard, not everyone, but every nation and every people group has heard about the gospel. Let me give you guys a little bit of education. As I said earlier, nations don't necessarily, if someone in the U.S. knows of Jesus and is considered reached, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone in the U.S. knows it, right? Because people in California can know it and people in Texas wouldn't. So we break it down to people groups. And so there's a lot of different people groups on this planet. So I want to break down for you what it really means for all the nations, all the people groups to be reached, because the end can't come until that happens. So stay tuned. So because there has to be every people group or nation reached on this planet in order for the end to come, I want to give you the statistics on how many people are currently unreached or how many people groups are currently unreached. There's currently 3.19 billion people, billion with a B, on this planet that have not heard about Jesus or don't have the opportunity to hear about Jesus because they're in a specific part of the world that doesn't allow that or doesn't have people to tell them. So that's 3.19 billion people. That's a lot of the planet that doesn't have the opportunity to hear about Jesus. And the end can't come until their people groups are reached with the gospel, according to the Bible. And I get this information from joshuaproject.net. I'll put that website in the description below so you can check that out and see where they get their information and fact check me if you'd like. So on joshuaproject.net, there's also over 7,300 people groups. So 7,300, I think 23 people groups on this planet that don't have the opportunity to hear about Jesus or are considered unreached. And so in order for the end times to come, all 7,300 and something of those people groups has to have the opportunity to hear about Jesus before the end can come. So either our statistics are wrong or the end times are just not here yet. So be aware that this can be the starting. And you saw also in Matthew 24 that the plagues and nations rising against nations are just the beginning pains, according to the Bible. So we very well could be in the end times, and that those people will be reached in the near future. But understand, so we may be in the end times, but understand the end cannot come before those people are reached with the gospel. I just want to end this video with stating what my opinion is on the coronavirus. Ultimately, I don't think it's very dangerous. It's only dangerous for a very select group of people, so the majority of the population is very safe. But we just got to be careful with, even if we're safe, for myself, young and healthy, doesn't have really much of an effect on me, but I can pass it on to someone that it really does have a great effect on. So please be careful and just aware for the people that you might pass it to. So please be careful, guys. Also, understanding that this panic is only going to make the situations worse. Us fighting over toilet paper is not going to help. I told you that separation and insecurity is going to lead to a lot more. And God forbid that this country go on, say, quarantine. Because if this country went on quarantine, we're relying on other people to respond well. And ultimately, our response to things in life are very important. And people responding with desperation, for example, if they didn't prepare well and they don't have the food necessary to feed their family, they're going to be pretty desperate and do some pretty desperate things. And I would really just hate to see people dying over fighting over food and really see our responses that poor because of the circumstances. So I challenge you guys and urge you guys to be careful, be aware, understand if this country went on quarantine to try to stop spread, understand that people will respond poorly. There's only so much we can do, and understand to just keep your family safe and just try to be aware, be prepared now. Try to, with that quarantine, really do stay in your house, because outside of your house, not only is it going to be dangerous from the virus, but also dangerous because people are going to be desperate. So please be aware of that. So ultimately, the biggest threat to this nation is not the virus, guys. It's our response. Our response of desperation. Understand that God is in control. God will provide. And where you have faith, God will reward you tremendously. So understand, even if this were the end times, understand that the glory of our Savior is coming back. Jesus is coming back. How glorious that will be. How joyful that will be. The fact that we can spend eternity in heaven. So stay relaxed, guys. Stay in peace. Stay in love. And stay calm and speak life into others. See you next time. Stay safe from the coronavirus.